Welcome to Behind the Ballot, where politics meets real life. We break down state and federal issues, showing how policy shapes everyday Americans. Engaged, balanced, and informative, that's our promise. I'm your host, Mikkel Jenkins, and today we have our first special guest episode of 2026. Our special guest is Brendan Gill, who is running in New Jersey's 11th Congressional District special election, which takes place on February 5th. Brendan, thank you for taking the time to join us today so that we can dive into your campaign and your overall vision for New Jersey.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And then before we dive fully into the interview, for our listeners and myself, tell us about yourself, how you got started in politics, and how you use that to lead you into running for Mikey Sherrill's vacated seat, as she is now the new governor of New Jersey.
I appreciate it. Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. Excited to be here. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. They tell me that's good luck.
Yes, it is.
I appreciate it. I'm born and raised in the township of Montclair, still make my home there with my family. My entry into public service really was through my family's kitchen table. My dad is a retired public school teacher in the township of Montclair, 53 plus years as a Montclair public school teacher, was part of the movement to help integrate the Montclair public schools in the late 60s, or excuse me, in the early 70s. So I got to witness kind of firsthand as I was growing up, the idea of how you could make a difference in your community locally, how you could affect change locally. And that had a big impact on what I chose to do with my career professionally. I went through the public schools in Montclair, was able to get to college and build a career doing the things that I love to do in public service. I worked for two members of Congress. I worked for the late Congressman Bill Pascrell, Congressman Steve Rothman. Went on to work for the late Senator Frank Lautenberg, and also as a senior advisor to Senator Cory Booker. In addition to that, I also, my entry into public service was through campaigns and through organizing. I started as a volunteer working on behalf of candidates and issues that I cared about in my own community. I saw kind of politics as a way to contribute, as a way to give back to those things that I cared deeply about. So as an organizer, also in my own background, that led me into what I would say this public service track. I didn't run for office till much later in my career. I ran, currently serve on the Essex County Board of Commissioners. I'm a part of the legislative body of county government. We have a 9-member legislative body, a county executive, and might have heard of him, a guy by the name of Joe D, and a 9-member legislative body that has oversight over all the aspects of county government. And I ran for that office about a decade ago. And what led me to run for public office wasn't just my involvement in working for members of Congress and working for other elected officials. Really, it was a few local issues that I was greatly concerned about. And I thought I could make a difference and an impact on those issues through the vehicle and through the platform of that particular seat, so to speak. And that's actually what's leading me now to run and raise my hand to run in this primary for Mikey Sherrill's, it's not just her seat, but to represent the Congressional District 11 as a member of Congress, now that she's our governor. What's really led me to do that is these varied experiences that I've had. I've had federal experience working from U.S. senators and members of Congress. I've worked in all 47 of the communities that make up the 11th Congressional District. I've represented over half of them on the Essex County Board of Commissioners for a decade, or I've worked in them through my work with the U.S. senators and members of Congress that I've mentioned. And I've been an organizer. I've been on the ground helping to elect and support Democratic candidates up and down our ballot across this district for quite some time. I chair in a volunteer capacity my local the Montclair Democratic Party. It's one of the most progressive and vibrant local party organizations in the state of New Jersey. We put together 3 of the largest No Kings rallies just this summer that the state, I think, had. So a lot of like time spent in civic engagement and public engagement that both came, from a family background, from, where my kind of professional career led me, and now leads me at this moment in time where I think I have the right skill set, to really serve this district well, and I'd be humbled to be able to do it.
And from your experience as you're talking, it really seems you have a variety and a very layered experience in government and at the community level and even at the grassroots level as well. And I really think that's what voters really want from their representatives. They want someone that has, been on the ground, has, quote unquote, been through the trenches of working hard in the campaign, being in a congressional office and doing that community work. And it's great and inspiring to hear that all of those things have led you to put your hat in the ring to run for the Congressional District 11 in New Jersey. And then now just wanting to get to a few other topics, starting with economic affordability and tax policy, because I'm sure you and constituents in the Congressional District 11 are feeling the economic squeeze from national Republican policies under the Trump administration, which have impacted programs such as SNAP and infrastructure funding. As a Democrat focused on lowering costs for working families, how can congressional action expand tax credits, eliminate billionaire tax breaks, and address New Jersey's high cost of living?
Yeah. So you're giving me the simple question to start with. So I think there's a few things that we can do. We got to restore the SALT property tax deduction. That's a big issue in the 11th congressional district. We got to remind voters that it was the Republicans that put that in place in the first place, right? So this idea that they're actually giving us a break by raising the deduction, like it didn't exist until they put it in place, right? So we got to completely eliminate those caps and restore it to what it was, right? In that sense. We have to expand the child tax credit, in any ways that we can. We have to fully fund SNAP. I'm on the front lines of that with the decisions that were being made during the most recent government shutdowns and what it meant for Essex County. We had, in the county of Essex, we had probably in a county of over 900,000 plus folks, we probably had 200 and I'm going to say roughly 25,000 people, right, were on or who received Medicare, for example. Let's just use that as an example, right? There are in a state of 9 million, 2 million in New Jersey, 2 million. Like, just let that sink in, right? Utilize that program or utilize some form of federal assistance. So we need people who are in Washington who completely understand that, who are fighting like hell to deliver on that. We got to close these tax loopholes. Right now, billionaires are not paying their fair share. That's just clear, right? You don't need to have a master's degree in economics to understand that those of us that are in this tax bracket, who are, considered to be middle class, working class families, we're getting hammered on both ends. Like, we are losing services. We have a lack of investment in the things that we rely on, like our infrastructure system, the protection of our open spaces and environment. I know we're going to touch on that in a little bit. And then on top of it, we are taking home less overall, just in terms of our own revenue or income, so to speak. We're paying more for our healthcare. We are finding it hard to create any pathway for a stable retirement. Both sides. So we have to address that for sure, in my opinion. And we have to also invest federal funding in transit, housing policies that create more affordable housing. And there's lots of ways we can do that. And as I mentioned earlier, childcare. We need more programs for early childcare. We need universal pre-K, as far as I'm concerned. Like, it's ridiculous in 2025 that that in the richest nation in the world, we cannot provide access to early childhood education to anyone who wants it. That income is still a barrier, even with good federal programs like Head Start, that are out there. Like, we have barriers to earlier childhood education that just shouldn't exist in 2025. And I mentioned, of course, and I didn't even mention, I'm sorry, our energy bills right now.
Yes.
And all those kind of under the broader, I guess, affordability crisis that I think we do have in this region, for sure. So.
Yeah, and I think individuals in my generation and younger generations are really feeling that squeeze. I mean, we see the reports come out when it comes to housing that the median homeowner age has now jumped up to about, I believe, 49 or 46. And we're seeing energy costs go up like 10, 20, 30%. We're seeing beef go up 16%. And while, eggs and gas is cheap, all these other prime essentials that us the younger generation needs and want to achieve to get ahead in life, we're really feeling like we're falling back behind, and the previous generation is really taking everything by the horns and running everything, when we would love opportunity to be able to do the same things that they just did. And kind of continuing on this,
I could not agree more. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut trouble.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect.
You're spot on. I mean, one of the reasons that I'm running and raising my hand to run, I have a 17 and a 14-year-old, so please keep me in your prayers on that. But I'm looking at, this next generation and what's available to them, right? So
yeah,
I am the son of a public school teacher. We lived in or my parents are, I'm very blessed. My parents are still with me. I launched my campaign in front of the home that I grew up in. They're still in that home. Awesome. But 5 of us in that home, 1 bathroom, shared a bunk bed with my younger brother that I a lot longer than I care to remember. But I had access, right, to live my own version of the American dream, right? I had access to affordable healthcare. I had access to a good local quality public school. I had access to a clean environment. I had access, for the most part, to an infrastructure system that was functioning and working the way that it was supposed to. I had access to a community that celebrated and talked about its diversity, did not run away from it. And all of those things kind of led me to be able to chart my own course, my own path, to find my way, into the middle class of this country. Meaning a home ownership became available, to me. Those types of things. And I'm looking at it for my children and for a generation. My kids are probably, are a lot closer to your age than to mine. So, and I see that, that access like that, excuse me, that median age now that you're talking about, which very much like home ownership, and rental's fine, right? I'm not saying that everyone needs to own a home, but the idea, this is where I have some disagreement, even within, I think this debate within even the progressive community about whether we should be pushing home ownership. First of all, we know, particularly in Black and brown communities, that we have the wealth gap is expanded, right?
Yes.
Even beyond what it is for someone who looks like me, right? And on top of that, home ownership is even harder for a variety of reasons, right? Because we still are dealing with the effects of redlining, the fact that we have, even in New Jersey, like, here's the big little dirty secret. Like, there's a reason we have 535 municipalities, right? That didn't happen by accident. There's some reasons for that. And those barriers make it harder, particularly for our young people, to plan and to be able to kind of get into their own lives, so to speak. They're dealing with high debt, from the cost of whatever they had to, get through to afford to go to college or any kind of secondary degree. They are finding that their income is not keeping up with inflation. And then on top of it, how do you, if you're paying off that debt and you can't afford to have good, and you're struggling to keep up with something as basic as having healthcare, how are you supposed to save any money in order to, right, to make that investment in a potential secure investment in something like a home, right? So those things are all wrapped together. And they're all under this affordability crisis. And that's why I think we have to have an active federal government that's helping us deal with those investments, that I talked about before, and also fight for them, when we're cutting those things, right, to essentially give tax breaks to people that respectfully don't need them right now. Right. And again, I'm not talking about redistribution of wealth. I'm talking about equity. That's right.
Yes.
I'm not talking about the fact that somebody shouldn't be able to get out here in our society and make money, and if that's their ambition, but also like we have an obligation to make sure that that matches, that income inequality matches what's going on the ground. So.
Yeah, I completely
wanted to
agree.
ask you something, Brendan, actually, since we're on the topic of housing prices and what we've been seeing. So as somebody who's running for Congress, trying to get into that national seat, what do you think Congress and what would you personally try to do to combat the rising cost of houses that are just been basically locking out an entire generation and more from that possibility?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing we got to do, I think it's actually regulated to, we have to regulate these technology companies right now that are setting algorithms that allow developers and other companies to buy large swaths of housing in ways that we never saw before. So that's a little bit of a root cause of what's going on, why we have this issue. So we got to do something at the federal level about that. We of course have to invest, continue to invest in housing policies that promote the creation of more affordable housing. We have a supply problem right now in our region too. In this particular region, we have, contrary to what Republicans have said and others, like people are not leaving this state. Matter of fact, they just right today that shows that that we're top 10 actually for in the last couple of years in census, according to the census, in terms of our own population. So that investment in affordable housing, that investment in affordable housing policies that promote access and accessibility to the type of housing we need, attacking the root causes of some of the technology companies that are contributing to the lack of this type of housing. We have to deal with that. And also, I think we have to work, I would say specifically, even though you asked me federally, I think we'd have to work very closely with our governor and our state legislature at the state level to follow the most recent affordable housing law to see if it's having the effect that we want it to have. Right. So I think it was a very good starting point. I thought the bill that was passed and signed by Governor Murphy should put us on a track to help us create more affordable housing in this region. Of course, it's relatively new, kind of wait and see on that. But I'd want to do all those things. And last but not least, which I also think is a big part of being, because I don't have all the answers, but it's a part of being it's a part of a very large part of being a member of Congress, in my opinion, which is I would want to have systemic communication with people in the various industries that are touched by the housing crisis or housing issue, communicating with my office on a regular basis. So I would have a standing committee that was made up of our nonprofit providers, of some developers, right, of people who are in this space, to have this and of elected officials from across my district that would meet with me, not just in a town hall style meeting, not just in a forum, but would meet with me regularly, right, to talk about this exact issue. Like, what can we do? What can we do federally? Because the other thing, in terms of being a member of Congress, you can't do anything alone. You have to build coalition. You have to build support. So anything that I want to do has to be done in conjunction, of course, with the other members of the delegation, our 2 U.S. senators, our partners on the ground. And that's a big part of my own candidacy. So I know that was a very long answer to that question, but all those things would be wrapped up in how I would think about it and approach it.
Thank you for the detailed answer. But as the saying goes, the devil's in the details. As much as it easy is to just say, like, oh, hey, we do want to lower housing prices by building more houses. Okay, well, how are we going to go about that? That's not something as simple as we can build more, or we can, do something with these companies that are buying these houses or buying these lands and pricing out others. 100%.
They got to be held responsible. They should have to be. And if we find that they're participating in predatory practices, right, they have to probably fund some of this, right, or if we find that, or we have to find ways to eliminate that, that doesn't allow that type of activity, which would prevent the smaller, quite frankly, developer who wants to build a home or two, right? Who wants to get out there. Like, that's almost impossible to do, right? Because you have these development companies now that have expanded their overall worth in ways that they can take these types of risks, lose a lot of money, and still sustain. Well, that doesn't lead to good policy outcomes in the area of housing, right? That creates its own other set of challenges, and we have to deal with that. I actually did that at the local level as an Essex County Commissioner. I worked with our now, she was the president of our board. I'm very proud to have her support in this race. Our now state senator, Brittany Timberlake, who was the Essex County Board of Commissioners president. She worked and she did a lot of work in housing for a long time. And when she was president of the board, we collaborated on creating an independent review of all the banks that held accounts in Essex County, meaning that we had to see, and they had to come before us a couple times a year through a banking review committee to show what were they doing, both to promote best practices, but also to make sure that we knew they were not bad actors in the areas of foreclosures, that they were doing their job right, if they were going to receive our public money, as a banking entity. And we have to do more, in my opinion, of that type of activity to hold the people that can make the main difference on these issues accountable.
I agree with that. I think we need to be able to hold these individuals accountable while also being able to pave the way for younger generations to be able to live a better life than their previous generations. Because that's what every generation wants for the new generation. They want them to do at least a step better than the previous generation. It seems that we're kind of getting away from that. But a lot of the initiatives that you have laid out seems like it would be able to get the younger generation in New Jersey on the right track. And I do appreciate you sharing that with us today. And want to continue on and moving to protecting democracy. And we've seen reports recently in the news about the FBI raiding the Fulton County election office in Georgia and the increasing attacks on the integrity of the U.S. election system. With concerns over election security and democratic norms being completely thrown out, how can Democrats in Congress push back against perceived threats? And how would you put together several strategies which would employ to ensure fair elections and combat extremism?
So I think the first thing I would say is look at my record. In Essex County, I led the movement to move the county away from touchscreens to paper ballots at a time when election security, especially following the 2020 election and the 2016 election. So if you go back to 2016 with the potential for Russian interference right in our elections during that election cycle, again, that was a big issue from 2016 to 2020. Of course, post 2020 was also a large issue. I actually led that charge at the county level to move our county board of elections and convince them that we needed, and it wasn't just me, it was a coalition of people that came and said, we want to make sure our elections are as safe as possible, and paper ballots are the safest way that you can vote, the most secure way that you can vote, prevents the least amount of potential interference that we could have in this issue, and I'm a big proponent of it. So I have a track record on fighting on these issues. In terms of our overall election security as we go forward, we're going to have to deal, even though, again, you're asking me as a member of Congress, it's going to means working with our state partners. So that means partnering with our governor and attorney general to make sure that we are completely prepared, right, for anything that they may throw at us to disrupt the execution of a fair and open election. One of the biggest myths that we have right now that's still being perpetrated by MAGA Republicans in Congress is that the 2020 election was not valid. I mean, we have election deniers. Matter of fact, we have one of them in Congress right now serving New Jersey, and Congressman Tom Kean Jr. will not even say that the 2020 election, will not say on the record that the 2020 election was valid, right? This is the political climate that we're in, which is just every published credible report says there was no inkling, right, of anything in the execution of that election that suggested that there was any widespread fraud or anything else, right?
Yeah, there was nothing of that matter, and I agree with you on the fact that Tom Kean doesn't spout that 2020 election was a solid election. He keeps saying it's rigged, and that's what we're seeing from a lot of MAGA. And it's going to be interesting to see once the Trump administration is over in 2028, how they reconcile with themselves from post-Trump, and if conservatives can even bring themselves together outside of what's already been put in place from MAGA. It's going to be very interesting to see. But as you've been talking, MAGA really needs to get a grip on the level of election security that's really already out there. I mean, I was watching the news today, and there was a reporter was talking to a constituent, and the individual did believe that the 2020 election was free and fair. And then as Trump has been, touting these remarks about the election being fraudulent and all these court cases, she has now changed her opinion. So it's kind of damaging to see that level of deterioration from the truth that we're really seeing, and that we're seeing our elected officials really push a lot harder now than previously.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's all part of the response, though, right? I totally agree. That means if I have the opportunity to be in this office, I have to use the platform of the office, right, to communicate to my constituents and our constituents that our elections are open, they're fair, and they're safe. Then I have to make sure that I'm also taking the steps where I'm working with, again, comes back to the coalition building. It's a lot of what I've spent my career doing, where we have to work with our other partners to make sure that we're doing that in the execution of that. I would also be a big proponent to continue to expand different ways for people to vote. In New Jersey now, we have, of course, you can vote by mail on a regular basis. You can participate in early voting, which is a significant other, I think, improvement that we've only had. That's a more recent development in New Jersey. And then, of course, voting on election day. We have to be able to in order to trust our democratic process, we have to give people access to be able to do it. A lot of states are in different debates about what is the best way, right, to execute an election. Right. I'm in the camp of still that we should have in 2025, like the idea that you could only vote on a certain day between a certain time. Right. Seems to be an antiquated idea.
Yeah, I agree.
So, we have to evolve with that. And we have to understand, if we want more people to participate in our democracy, we also have to meet them where they are. Right. Like this is a larger governance question too, that deals with the issue of not just of voting and voting rights and protection of our elections, but also just things that we need to start to have discussions about, right? I'm not, we still vote on the first Tuesday in November. Like, there are reasons that date was set like that those reasons are now gone or not relevant, right? And we can talk about, I'm just using something like as a very small thing and throwing it out there. It's like, why do we have our elections in the first Tuesday of November? Why do we have still 435 members of Congress? Why do we still use the Electoral College? Like these things are definitely queued up for some discussion, because I think there needs to be a reform, potentially, movement in the areas of some of the governance issues that we have that would allow for more participation. And by the way, that's not a Democrat or Republican thing. That's a civic engagement thing, right? That's to help more engagement, which I think ultimately is a good thing for the health of our democracy. The other thing is we got to make sure that we're going to have this midterm election. People, I'm out there talking to voters every day, and somebody asked me yesterday, and they said, "Well, do you think we'll have a midterm election?" And I had to pause, right? I mean, it's not something that I think a decade ago I would have even ever thought that we would reach that point, at least in our time, right, in this country, where I had to pause to think about whether or not there may be a scenario, because we've seen it already. We saw that the peaceful transition of power was disrupted in January 6th, something that we thought, again, we had established as a principle as Americans, right, that we had accepted that principle, and we went backwards. And the same thing is like, hey, is there going to be an election in 2018? We could be going backwards on that. So what do we need to do? We need to be talking about it. We need to be reminding people that that's not okay. We need to be talking about these issues around election security and strengthening our democracy. And we need to utilize, I would need to utilize my office in order to do that.
And I completely agree with that as well. I think the fraudulent claims that have been made have really been exasperated. I mean, the percentage of even fraud that there is so minimal that it doesn't even change the outcome of any election. So the fact that he's continuing to push out these lies and his voters are taking it on face value really shows just where their thinking is at and heading towards. And like, as you were saying, like a year ago, you wouldn't think that someone would actually ask you if the midterms would actually be happening and so forth. And those were the same conversations that me and Muhammad were having. We were seeing the swings and in the polls from approvals on Donald Trump's biggest issues, immigration, manufacturing, and the economy. And we're seeing him slide almost every single week. And they understand that they are not in the best seat with constituents. And even the redistricting war that they even started, Gavin Newsom has took them to the bat, and he's won Prop 50. So there's a lot of things that are going in a Democrats' direction that Republicans have started thinking that they were going to get one up over on the Democratic Party. So it's great to hear that you're going to be someone that's a fighter for election security, and even more importantly, getting younger generations more involved in civic engagement. Last time me and Muhammad were talking, one very good quote that I always like to say to individuals when I speak to them is that if you're not into politics, politics is into you, because no matter what you do, everything is in politics, on your laptop to your house to the street signs to basically everything is always tied to politics. So I do appreciate that. And then wanting to continue on the issue of immigration reform and community protection, which has been a major topic in recent news, especially with the unfortunate passing of Renee Good and Alex Peretti. The Senate is debating the appropriations bill while the House has gone home for the weekend, which is going to most likely trigger a government shutdown. What reforms would you advocate for if you were currently in Congress for community safety and potential ICE reforms in diverse New Jersey districts?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And I think of it in kind of a short and a long term. So short term, if I was there right now, I would absolutely be willing to shut the government down and to stop funding of current ICE activities. What we are witnessing in Minneapolis is outrageous. The most recent incident, I believe, by all accounts, appears to me to be the murder of an American citizen, by a federal agency. This agency right now is operating way outside the bounds of what a federal agency should be doing. So we need to defund, I think, this agency for sure, and we need to use the power of the purse in order to do that. So I would be open to doing that. We also need to. That's the short term, right? That's like getting this back to the table,
right? Yep.
Getting this in. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I would also say that, ultimately what we want to do is we want to see if ICE and DHS is operating with, with accountability and transparency, right? Like those are just, and also within the bounds of the Constitution, right? Yeah. Are people being afforded due process, right? Like this is not, I don't think this is a radical idea, right?
No.
This is a, should we be having masked agents essentially in communities, causing fear and terror? Because outside looking in, that's what we're seeing. Now we're seeing this in New Jersey, not on that scale, right? We just had a young man in Morristown just 2 weeks ago now, Juan Mendoza, who was doing his laundry, a 17-year-old, I think maybe 18-year-old senior in high school, who was in a laundromat in his neighborhood. And he was, doing what most kids at that age, should be doing, which would be getting himself prepared for the week, right? And he was swept up, detained for over 6 days, 5 or 6 days. Luckily, a federal judge released him, right? But there was a huge outcry on that particular incident because this is the type of terror so that these agents are causing in our communities? How do we deal that in the short term? We have to be organizing, right? We have to organize and be working with our local law enforcement agencies to talk about what protecting our communities looks like. We need the Immigration Trust Directive passed into law and signed. I was disappointed. Listen, I ran Governor Murphy's 2017 campaign, primary general election campaign. I'm proud to have his endorsement. I think he was a very good governor, but I was on the record saying that I believe that was a mistake not to sign that legislation before he left office. I thought he should have done it. I think it needs to get back to Governor Mikey Sherrill's desk. It's supported by over 75% of the legislature, or maybe not, but pretty close. The will of the people, and the elements of that directive would allow us to engage with our local communities in a way that we would be able to keep them safer if we have federal intervention, right, that is not following basic tenets of our Constitution. We have to have know your rights type seminars, which are happening quite a bit. We need to utilize our office. Like if I was on the ground, I would be meeting and working with community partners, nonprofit leaders, faith-based leaders, and also understanding where these communities live. Although it's happening everywhere, listen, we can see it. It's concentrated in communities, where Black and brown folks are living, right? And it's important to know that. It's one of the things, I don't want to, it's part of this question, but I think it's also something that separates me in this primary that I'm running in from the candidates that I'm running against. It's that I've been here and on the ground. I don't need to be educated as to where communities are. I'm not meeting leaders in those communities for the first time, right? That allows you to have a quicker response, right? Because the level of hopefully trust has been established. And also there is an understanding on my part of where and what these communities are going through on a daily basis. So kind of all of those things. And then longer term, we need comprehensive immigration reform. We need quicker pathways to citizenship. And oh, by the way, we can do that and still have a strong and secure border. They're not mutually exclusive. And it's very personal for me. My wife is a Colombian immigrant. She emigrated to this country when she was 14. She serves, we have a heavy public service family. She serves in the New Jersey State Assembly. She's the first Colombian American to ever serve in the New Jersey State Assembly. I have a multiracial family. My kids are Latino more than anything else. The Irish side is coming to terms with that. But like, there's a, this is not a abstract issue for me in my own home. Alex's mom had to come over first, right? She was separated from her mother at some formative years before they could find a safe passage, to legal citizenship for Alexon to be able to enter into this country. Like, I understand firsthand and see it. Like, this is not an abstract issue for me. So, so we'd be on the ground organizing, fighting, collaborating, and also hopefully working on some longer term, both short and longer term legislative solutions, defunding ICE immediately, shutting the government down if we need to in order to bring this to a head, and then longer term coming up with a solution to make sure that this agency functions the way it's supposed to.
And I think that on the ground level that you've been speaking on is really what sets you apart from a lot of the other candidates. As you said, you're already kind of interconnected to everything within the 11th district. You understand the issues on a personal matter as well as subject matter. And I think that's what a lot of constituents are going to appreciate when they come to vote for you in the primary. And as well as a lot of things that you have been saying are very much in tune to a lot of constituents and how they feel and how New Jersey and nationally things have changed and kind of where we want things to go. And wanting to move on to education, and recent education cuts in areas like Passaic County highlight funding issues alongside calls for affordable healthcare and better schools. How would you advance Democratic goals for public education and higher education and in healthcare in Congress, addressing New Jersey's specific disparities?
So I think, again, a lot of these questions are interrelated, right? So it's the questions on education. So let's just talk about education specifically, and then I want to talk about healthcare for a quick minute, because I think it's directly related to how we support our public schools. So we got to fully fund Title I, which covers our special education and lots of our educational needs. We have to fully fund public education. I'm a huge proponent of public education. New Jersey actually has some of the best public schools in the nation. We also know at the same time that we're still dealing with issues where outcomes are very much tied to where you live, right? And the type of investment that you have. So again, we have to get past this oh, well, the public schools are good or they're bad. No, we have very good quality foundation and some areas in need of reform, right? And investment. So we have to think about that even from a federal perspective. We have to use Title I funding and other funding streams to help address the underfunding that you just talked about, specifically in Passaic County. I'm going through that right now. There's a situation in my own hometown of Montclair where there's a $20 million, deficit, debt, a $7 million operating deficit. Nutley, Belleville have all been experiencing this. It's outside of the district. They were just dealing with a big issue in Hackensack. It's not in CD11, but there's a big funding gap that we have. Where does a lot of this root cause come from? The cost of healthcare right now. If you look at premium, where folks are going with their premiums right now, I can tell you this as a county commissioner, we're looking at anywhere from a 27 to 28% premium increase in 1 year. We have 3,700 employees. We have a AAA bond rated county. It's a very, very well-run county from a fiscal standpoint, in my opinion, not just because I'm a member of the government. I'll give credit to our county executive administration. They do a very good job. But for the first time ever, we're in some discussions about what does this mean for our employee base, right? Because it's not a sustainable model. We cannot afford to pay what we're being asked to pay. And many school districts are in the same position, right? So you have to do something about this, the cost of healthcare and this healthcare crisis in order to help strengthen our public schools. They're directly tied. We also have to, I think, treat our educators, and I would be a big proponent of investing in programs that reward you for teaching, that reward you for that level of community service, and it helps also to think about how we're going to fix both providing proper retirement and pension benefits and retiring health benefits. That was always part of the equation. You knew as a public school educator that you may make a little less money, right? And you weren't doing it to get rich, for sure, right? But you were, excuse me, let's call it what it is. You were doing it with the idea that you were going to be able to have, other benefits provided to you, that form of public service. We need to pay our teachers more.
Yes, we do.
I don't understand every other, right. And not on this idea of, well, we need to have metrics and no, just point blank, our teachers need to be paid more. Who would want to go, and from your generation, who in their right mind would want to go into that profession right now, right? Because
I agree.
Basically what I'm telling you is, hey, here's what I'm offering you. I'm offering you underfunded facilities, potentially instability in whether you will be able to maintain your job. I'm going to have you, let's say you have 100 kids a day. I'm going to have you be a manager for 100 plus students and their parents, but I'm not going to give you any other assistance or potential help. I'm not going to be able to guarantee you that I'm going to be able that most of your salaries in the beginning is not going to go to pay for your healthcare. So you're really not going to see that much money in your pocket. And oh, by the way, that whole thing about having a stable retirement, I don't think we can offer that anymore. You still want the job? Oh, and you're going to work till exhaustion because you're going to be in the classroom dealing with young people, right, for 8-9 hours a day. And then you're going to go home and have homework to do to prepare for the next day.
Yep.
Okay, right. So unless and God bless people who go into it. My dad did it for 53 years. But even if I look at anecdotally, my own family, he was able to, on a starting teacher's salary, buy a very modest home in the township of Montclair. That's impossible. Right?
Yeah.
worked multiple jobs, 3 jobs, 4 jobs. As we grew up with my younger brother and younger sister, he tutored, he worked at Seton Hall in the Upper Bound program during the summers. He worked all year round. But even what he was able to do is almost an impossibility for your generation. So we need to fix that, because we can't be lip service anymore. So we gotta find ways to fund programs that potentially help deal with the issue of cost of healthcare, that deal with the issue of finding pathways to stable retirements, and also allows districts then to pay their teachers more money.
And then kind of want to get into on just staying on education, but then moving on to like higher education. As we've seen in the news and economic reports and job reports, that there have been a lot of job losses, and a lot of it has been tied to AI and all of the new advances that it can do now. Would you be for the expansion of community colleges in the state of New Jersey, and kind of what their capabilities are and what they can do to better the workforce for those blue collar jobs, which we're now seeing an explosion of, and we're seeing a lessening of the white collar jobs?
I would be, I'm in favor of pathways actually for free community college. I'm in favor of absolutely expanding programs that are focused on what I'm going to still call the technical training for the jobs of the future. I would support the expansion of our community college pathways, both to 4-year degrees and to jobs in the workforce that already exist, right? So I still believe ultimately in the value of a 4-year degree. I understand this kind of conversation that we have about, a liberal arts education versus I have to get a job.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
I'm gonna get 2 seconds and just thank you.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
just see if I can grab somebody to grab me some water. But the ultimate conversation, though, right, that I think you touched upon is that we have major changes coming to our economy, not in 15, 20 years, but right now. Yeah. Right now, full time, I run a small business. It's a communications firm, right? I have, 5 to 7 employees, depending on what time of year, right, in the projects that we're working on. I know right now that, and this is not why I'm running for Congress, but I know right now that there are things that this firm and my firm does, and I have employees right now who do things right now that in a year to 2 years, AI will completely take care of those needs. Mm-hmm. I will not need the human capital in order to execute on some of those. I'm a service. I say this all the time. I'm a service-oriented business and a service-oriented economy right now, right? A small business trying to fit in on that. And for me, this is where community colleges come in. At the same time, having the ability to have a place where people who may not want to go to a 4-year degree, or everyone doesn't have to go to college, can get different types of training that are directly related to these jobs that we know that are coming online right now. Tell you one other thing, because you give me the opportunity. I think about this a lot too, and I don't have the answer, but what do you do as we move towards the future in a capitalistic society when there are no jobs?
Yep.
Right. And we are seeing whole segments of our economy that potentially may be replaced, right, through these advances in technology.
No, very well.
And not saying that there won't be new jobs or other jobs, but I do think you have to have conversations around universal basic income and things of that nature right now, because there are quite a bit of elements of our economy that are about to be completely replaced. I'll give you one just quick example. Truck drivers, about 2 million plus in the entire country, as we see more self-automated vehicles, right? And you're already seeing this in delivery. You're talking about 2 million folks who may be without their jobs in the next 5 to 10 years. Just think about the impact on our economy. So lots to tackle in that space.
No, definitely a lot to attack. And as you're saying about truck drivers, I was looking at a report and it was listing, I think, at the top 100 jobs that would be removed from AI. And obviously the first few were in that service field, customer service agent, all of those things. And it was funny enough, I actually saw policy analyst, which is my current role for the New Jersey Council of County Colleges. And that was at like 50, 60 range. So just to see that my current job is on there
Yeah.
and, legislative reporting and things of that nature were also on there, it really scares individuals like myself to think in, 10, 15 years, is my job still going to be relevant, or am I going to have to almost reinvent myself within
Right.
those years to try to get myself back into the economy and back to working and, well, back to working and actually making a good wage from it as well.
Yeah, no question. I think no question about it. That's why we have to regulate. That we do need guardrails,
Mhm.
around AI for sure. We have 7 companies that make up the S&P 500 right now. All of them are technology companies. They make up the entire S&P 500, and they control or work on those very technologies that we're discussing. They also have oversight, so to speak, over everything that we're seeing, and on these
Yep.
devices that control
Mhm.
so much of our life. So we need guardrails in place. And by the way, when I say that, I'm not saying we bury our head in the sand and don't accept that these technologies are here.
Yes.
I'm
Mhm.
just saying that we have to have some oversight and regulation that makes sure that these companies also are acting in good faith in terms of the implications that the technologies have in a variety of areas, our economy, on our young people's mental health, which is a big, big problem right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
The dis and misinformation that enters into our civic discourse right now, which contributes to, I think, so much of the challenges that we're having right now, because the disinformation that you pick up from those platforms,
Mhm.
um, I could tell the public right now that I'm recording a podcast, and if somebody put out there that it isn't true, 40% of the people would just say it's not
Yeah.
true. And that's a
Mhm. I
problem.
agree.
But to
No.
answer your original question, like the community colleges, I think and our vocational training is a big kind of evolution that we need to continue to make, actually, as we think about what does higher education look like for that next generation,
Mhm.
and particularly to help break down barriers to get into the workforce quicker, if that's a good path and a right path. The thing I struggle with is I do still think there's a very high value on some basic, again, elements of liberal arts education. I know you don't, and this is the
Yeah.
big thing. College is so expensive right now. People are saying, why am I paying all this when it doesn't, the ROI, right? But it's like, I also don't think you just go to college or even community college just for the ROI. Like
Yes.
there,
Mhm.
like that needs to be part of it, but also needs to be part of balanced of, um, is it teaching you, are your literacy skills improving? Are you becoming a more critical thinker? Are you learning to write better? It's another issue that I see with young people because of
Mhm.
this over reliance on AI. I have to say this just anecdotally.
Oh
Like,
man, yeah.
I don't see strong writing skills in young people, at least that come across my desk. And I think I'm already seeing that's because an over reliance on AI to help them write.
Yes,
uh,
I mean, as when I was in college, it would take me almost a few hours just to knock out a 5, 10 page paper. So I can't imagine now how students are when their teachers are like, "Yes, you have to write this 10 page paper, and no AI, no anything." And I can see how much they're struggling because when you rely so much on AI, you dilute your own skills and your own knowledge because you continuously just take that for its word and you don't, and especially if you don't change what it gives you or at least provide edits to it, then you're just basically shooting yourself in the foot and it's not helping you at all. It's actually making you a lot worse in the long run. And you're going to be losing your professionalism by continuing to use AI in those capabilities.
I couldn't agree more. I have a 17-year-old junior in high school. I see it live and up close in my household. I know the difference between, when he's using it and when he's not, and not that I'm checking on his homework, so to speak, on a regular basis, but, but that being said, how we it also means, even we're talking about public education, and I know these are kind of maybe broader issues that we're discussing, and I do think they have a role in a member of Congress, like in terms of the platform of the office. I keep coming back to that. And how you would push. I apologize. I'm just shaking off some allergies, so I've been.
No, it's perfectly fine. We know it's cold out there and everyone's sick. No, it's perfectly fine.
I'm not, unlike the rest of New Jersey, I'm actually not sick. I just been shaking off a little bit of an allergy for whatever reason with the temperature change. But the ultimate, evolution of what education should look like, what public education should look like, that's a whole other topic. We could probably do a whole other podcast on that. I talk about it all the time. I mean, if Rip Van Winkle, woke up, one day, I think the only thing he would potentially still recognize is what's going on in a school. Right? Like, there hasn't been an evolution. So even as a huge supporter of public education, it's like, I'll tell you things that drive me crazy, and I would love to be able to work federally on this. It's like, schools should be community centers. Like, the building should be open. Like, first of all, the infrastructure should be updated and the building should be open.
Yes.
Why are we still going to school with long summer breaks? That's a whole other issue. It's an agrarian calendar. That's why it was originally set up that way. That's why we went to school from September to June. Most of us are not farmers anymore, right? It's like, and we know these kind of things are impactful, that could make better improvements, right, in the quality of the education that we're receiving. You're still kind of going through 45, 50-minute blocks in the same kind of traditional way that, I went through, the generation before me went through, with no real thought of like, is this still the best way to set up the school? So we kind of know these things, like, we need more behavioral services. We need more cultural enrichment. We need shorter breaks, but that doesn't mean be in school all year long. It just means, right, you retain more. And also, for that next generation, it's going to be so much more about how they analyze information versus find it. They can find anything now quickly, right? Yeah. It's going to be really, really, in our, a lot of stuff that we went through was kind of, drilled, into you, right? Or how you had, the memorization aspect of certain elements of education. I believe as we go forward, that still has its place, but also, like, how are we educating young people to think and think critically is as important, because like you just said, like, with something that used to take you 2, 3, 4 hours, maybe could be done in 20 minutes, right? Yeah. Even in doing that level of research, right? When's the last time you heard a young person tell you that they went to the library, even when they're doing a research, in a higher ed institution, right? You work for the council, you mentioned, like, I have college students in my family, and like, when I had a research paper, I went to the library, right? Yep. Right? Yeah. I did the research in that way, and that's fine. This is just more access. I'm not saying like we're going to go back, don't bury our head in the sand. We don't say, this is not to give you the back in my day, I walked uphill both ways to school type of thing. But it's, it's a recognition that the technologies have to influence how we think about what we're doing at the federal level when we're thinking about public education and how we support it.
And those have been great answers, Carl.
And our county college system.
Oh, yes, of course. And I think expansion on the county college front and on the educational front is definitely the best way for New Jersey. Because as you said, we do have great schools, but it's really sometimes we may need to reinvent how those schools teach, because it's been done for so many years. And it's kind of almost producing the same exact results for our students. And even with the inclusion of AI, it's starting to even dilute the skills and the knowledge of our students as well. And I know we are edging towards the hour mark, but I do want to get your answers to our climate change section as well. And then with So as we've seen with the Trump administration,
I'll try to be
oh
brief.
no, of course, no. Your answers have been great and very substantive. And I definitely appreciate all of them. And just on climate change and the clean energy initiatives, as we've seen with the Trump administration, they have been on continuous attack, almost specifically in New Jersey and across the nation, when it comes to taking down all of these green initiatives. What ways would you fight the current administration from dismembering all of these clean energy initiatives? And also, how can federal policies support New Jersey's transition to a sustainable economy while creating good paying jobs? And what challenges do you foresee from national opposition? I know you're going to give me a brief answer, and that was a long question, but I think you got this one. I think you got it.
Let me take those in smaller pieces. Short term, long term.
Yep.
Again, short term, if I have the opportunity to get into Congress right now, we're still going to be in the minority for calendar year 26, but we do have leverage over money that's been appropriated. So we cannot allow him, whether that means fighting him in court, fighting him at the state level, we cannot allow him to not spend money that's been appropriated for various climate change activity that you just talked about, various programs, the funding of the Department of Environmental Protection, kind of all of those things underneath that banner. Those things have to happen. We take back the House of Representatives, which I think we will. No question that we're going to take back the House of Representatives. Then we really have the power of the appropriation process, meaning the power of the purse, the money, right? So that's a big leverage point, both as we go through the federal budget to make sure that we are investing in alternative clean energy, that we're investing in things like solar, that we're divesting from our fossil fuels, that we're promoting policies at the state level, like the Climate Superfund Act. I think they're going to rename it, but I think that's a great piece of legislation that's being pushed at the state level by State Senator John McKeon, just for the record, also endorsed me in this race, but who would allow us to hold our corporate polluters responsible, so we're not paying for what they did with terms of the release of greenhouse gas emissions into our environment, so we can go after these fossil fuel companies in a way to make sure that, hey, you need to pay for what you did. You and I should not be paying for what they did to our environment. So we need a comprehensive approach on all of those issues as they relate to the environment overall. I also think, just in general, my experience is that, particularly with our younger voters, they're super focused on this issue.
Yeah.
Like, they get it. They understand intuitively what these threats to the environment mean to their own future. So we, as a Democratic Party, need to make sure that we're pushing an agenda and talking about these issues in ways that young people are hearing us and seeing us.
I agree. No, and I think that's what a lot of the younger generation want. We want to continue these clean energy initiatives because we understand where the world is heading towards and how the climate has changed throughout the years and the beginning of this earth. And we just want to have a healthy environment for when, everything is years down the road. We don't want to have to go through areas. We have communities that are so entrenched environmentally that it affects their economy and the local community as well as a foothold. And then you have a lot of these not in my backyard policies, which Trump administration has kind of been going forward with the AI data center expansion, which feeds into the climate change and energy initiative crisis as well. So with all of those things intertwined, everything that you said are very good initiatives to be able to subdue a lot of that and make sure that specifically in New Jersey and nationally, that clean energy is a top initiative and something that you're going to be able to fight for. And I greatly do appreciate that. And I appreciate all of your answers that you've been able to give to our questions today. And as always, Brendan, thank you again for joining us. This has been a great conversation. And before you go, Brendan, please, would you like to provide just a closing statement to our guests, to our New Jersey constituents, as the primary is on February 5th?
Well, first of all, thank you. No, I enjoy this. It's been a great opportunity, and thank you for doing it. Right. I mean, this is so critically important. These types of conversations. I think that's what it's all about. We need more of this, I think, in our country right now. So it's been my honor to be with you today. We have a primary Thursday, February 5th. We're under, 6. I'm losing track of the days because I'm campaigning so much.
Days, I believe
6 days from, early voting has started.
Yes.
Important to note that if you live in Congressional District 11, which is 14 communities in Essex, 27 in Morris, 3.5, I'm going to say, in Passaic County, a 3-county district. If you're in one of those 47 communities, early voting has started January 29th through February 3rd. You can go to our website, Gill for NJ. You can find out where those locations are, and you can vote right now. If you vote by mail on a regular basis, you may already have your vote by mail ballot. You probably do. They were mailed during the holidays. It's a very unusual nature of this election. So it might have got lost in that holiday shuffle. Keep an eye out for that ballot. Get it returned into one of our ballot boxes. One of the things that we didn't touch on is actually the federal change and what they're doing, right, with the postmark stamp, right? So if you vote by mail, put the ballot in one of the drop boxes. Drop boxes are located at every town hall across this district. So utilize that. And of course, Thursday, February 5th, the polls will be open 6 a.m. To 8 p.m. as they normally would be. So the most important thing we can do right now with the threats to our democracy, with these issues that we so deeply care about, that we touched on today, the most important thing that we all can do right now is participate and vote. Very briefly, as I said, I'm born and raised in this district. I'm of this district. I am still here. I'm not just passing through. I would be here with you whether I win or lose this election to be able to try to serve my community and this district in any way that I can. I think what separates me, again, from my colleagues, not even my opponents, they're my colleagues that I'm running against in this race, is that I'm bringing the full skill set to what I think a member of Congress needs to do to be an effective representative. I know my way around Washington. I know my way around this district. I'm an organizer, and no one's ever going to tell you that I'm not a fighter. So we need all of those things right now, I think, to bring that to this job. And I believe at this moment in time, my experience, my skill set, my relationships, and take a look at who's endorsed me in this race. It's a broad coalition of people, not machine politicians or political hacks or other ways that people have tried to disparage some of that support. These are people that serve our community every single day. Some of them are elected officials. Some of them are people like the governor, I was proud to have his support, but also others are nonprofit leaders, faith-based leaders, educational leaders. These are people that I've had the opportunity to work with on behalf of the people that I have represented, and I've delivered results, and they're excited about what potentially we could do in the future if I have the opportunity to represent this district in Washington. So I humbly ask anybody who sees this to please give me some consideration, but most importantly, make sure you vote.
Of course. And to our listeners, thank you again for tuning in to Behind the Ballot. And Brendan, thank you for coming on once again. And of course, on this podcast, it's where we keep politics engaged, balanced, and informative. To our listeners, stay curious, stay critical, and please always stay involved. I'm Mikkel Jenkins. And until next time, keep looking beyond the headlines and behind the ballot. Thank you.
Thanks, Mikkel.